Gen Z gamers, you know nothing about disappointment, betrayal, lies, things falling through, delays, cancellations. You're all walking around complaining that GTA 6 has got another year on it. Try 8. Try jumping a whole goddamn system. Try a sequel that was supposed to be the follow-up to one of the greatest 8th generation console games of all time, Shadow of the Colossus. You know nothing. I am Couch Coop. I'm going to start with one of my ancient anecdotes. I will timestamp. Some of you who are up to speed with Couch Coop lore will have watched the GT7 embarrassingly bad split screen review. That is not feedback, that's the name of the video. It's the same flatmate. It's 14 years ago and I'm sitting there playing Snake Eater on my PlayStation 2. The legendary aforementioned flatmate flies through the door with news that the new Last Guardian trailer has dropped on IGN. Okay, so this is a PlayStation 3 game. The PlayStation 3 has not come out yet. This was an exclusive, and this was basically going to be a system seller because Shadow of the Colossus was so huge. It was everywhere. It was one of the best games on that PlayStation 2 system. I actually found a channel that only does OG Shadow of the Colossus footage. I'll see if I can link them. They didn't change much, to be fair. This is the PlayStation, or what we thought was going to be the PlayStation version of the game showed, but the upgrades on the actual protagonist himself, there's a bit more detail, but as far as Trico goes and what looks to be a very similar engine, there's not a huge difference. This is a review of the game on the PlayStation 5 console. We do see some minor backwards compatibility boosts. We'll go into them in a second. But if you'd have said to me, sat on that PlayStation 2 all those years ago, that you're going to be reviewing this game to 17,000 subscribers on a PlayStation 5, I would have laughed in your face. It seems strangely fitting to go right back round to the beginning of a lot of my love for this console generation, be it 8th, 9th and 10th. There are some cracking games out there. Shadow of the Colossus is certainly one of them. Is The Last Guardian worth going back to? Is it worth putting onto your PlayStation 5? Spoilers, it kind of is, because there's nothing like this out there at the moment. And I also forgot how amazing the intro was. He's donning all of his armour. I've gendered Trico, by the way. Amazing stuff. Completely forgot when you're pulling the arrows out at the beginning. It's a real bonding, clever scene. And it was very impactful for me playing this originally on the base level PlayStation 4. That was the first place I got to with this game. It was enhanced for the Pro and it did feature 4K pretty early on, but it had some issues with frames. There was a bit of screen tear. This PlayStation 5 version is pristine, absolutely stunning looking. It's hard to believe this is 9th gen. Also on the Couch Coop lore front, you might know I have an autistic level of attention with my camera pans and UI. You cannot take that control prompt off. It ruined so many epic scenes, and the camera follows Trico around autonomously. You can't get an actual pan. I nearly lost my mind trying to get some controlled footage of this game. That's why it's taken me so long. I just had to let go and let the camera do its thing, and it does kind of work, but I can totally understand how that would wind loads of people up. Let's get to the actual specs, because things get interesting. White screen alert. So it runs better without the patch. It runs at a lock 60 without patching it. What are you doing? What's going on? I've seen this before. Other games that once they talk to the internet, they get worse. This is all patched footage, so it did run at 30 frames per second. I will say it's pretty damn pegged and smooth. Look at the reflection on that shield. Some of the effects are really ahead of its time. It tried very hard with dramatic lighting. No ray tracing, reflections or shadows in here. It's all just good art and clever engine management. Trico himself jumps into the water here. You've got to remember the year. This was pretty amazing. And remember, a staunch PlayStation 4 exclusive. It's the same with Bloodborne. There are very few of them left and they're neglected on the PlayStation 5. They're not given proper patches. They're not put on SSDs. I did the Dragon's Dogma review and I said to put in the comments if you want to see a PlayStation 5 remastered version of this game. Everyone just said yes, 100%, I'd give the money. And it's like you've turned your back on loads of business. They do it all the time. Naughty Dog would rather just roll out a 7th remastered version of The Last of Us Part 1 than come up with something new. Factions cancellation is probably a conversation for another time. Back to the camera thing, and apologies for showing you repeat footage. I was blabbering over it, wasn't paying attention. I am not touching the controller. Check this out. It's doing everything on its own here. It's focusing on Trico. It does take into account the landscape sometimes, but half the time I'm like, what's going on? Who's playing this game? Let's talk about the game's premise. Let's talk about what it actually is. I bill it as a companion puzzler, and if you've played Ico, you'll know that the developers have dipped their toes into sort of controlling more than one character on screen at the same time. With this, you have a whole set of moves that are sat on the R button, and essentially you can ride or be alongside Trico in puzzles, and you get separated. It is only puzzlers. You do not hit, slash, whack, parry, guard, dive roll, anything. And if anything kicks off, it's Trico doing it. That sounds fine. I don't know what your beef is. When they made this, I think they wanted to really show good AI coding on the companion and almost a personality with Trico. What's happened is it sort of overcooked things a little bit. The damn thing doesn't do what you tell it. You'll be stuck in an area. You don't know where you've got to go up or down. You don't know if Trico can make that jump or not. You end up just sitting on his back and shouting at the poor thing. It also takes ages to introduce any foes or adversaries, and Trico is introduced with some lightning powers coming out of his horns. That's almost like forgotten about for a vast majority of mid-game. It's just very fiddly puzzles, which I don't particularly like. Some people out there will love it, and I know people, PlayStation 4 fans, who worship this game, and rightly so, because it does still look incredible. And as I said at the beginning, this is such a unique experience. What I've just explained is nothing like Shadow of the Colossus, which is essentially like a 16 boss huge arena takedown game. But again, the puzzles in that are so well woven into white knuckle gameplay, you don't even realize you're doing a puzzle. You think you're climbing onto the wrist of something to then decapitate it. But with this, I think its speciality is the bond. And when Trico comes through, you get separated, you hook up again, the little noises it makes, the way it looks at you and its funny little stunted wings, you kind of grow to love this thing. And the adversaries getting between you and it and stopping your progress blended together quite well. Trico's changing character during combat is actually quite a cool thing to observe, and all the little nuances that have been put into the behavioural patterns. He'll move the barrels around, he'll look up at you when you're on a high surface and try and join you, he'll even make sympathetic noises when you've hurt yourself. It's really crazy how much depth has been pointed into this relationship. And I'm trying to think of other games that handle an NPC companion character with such delicacy and diligence. Let's talk about the controls of the protagonist himself, because that's quite interesting. There is some Colossus throwback here with being able to grab on, crawl around. He also teeters on edges quite well, and loads of it is about hanging an Assassin's Creed style shimmying along annoying ledges and not sitting on the back of Trico and just having like special moves and lightning bolts coming out of his horns and him being able to fly, swoop down like Monster Hunter mount. No, you're looking for a key that's behind a door that Trico can't get through, and he'll be banging said door constantly until you resolve the task. As far as the puzzles actually go, they do sort of mix them up quite a lot, and he's got a grab mechanic and it's very well utilised, both for traversing, going up and down stuff, and carrying things. And there's a throw mechanic, so everything gets the aforementioned involved on a solution front. It's just that I'm, as a gamer, don't like this model too much, but I do enjoy the relationship with Trico and some of the graphics on it. The feathers, the wounding, and how his face actually changes and morphs around. The more blue barrels you give him, the more those horns extend. A little bit of spoiler, but things do get a bit more interactive towards endgame. Horizon Forbidden West did this to me a little bit, and it got me craving being outside, being in the open. The game just shoves you in sort of loads of dungeony, closed caves, darkness seems to be everywhere. The patches of this game that are actually in pure, unbroken sunlight outside, they look like that trailer material, are not as frequent as I'd like them. You're just in dingy, smaller rooms that Trico can't bloody fit in, and you're just shouting obscenities. It's not fun for either parties. But it's this sort of stuff we're seeing here keeps me engaged, and I think the developers wanted that. Seeing his behaviour, what changes, where you put things, the little delicate pour out to sort of get the barrel. He won't go for stuff if it's in like a depression or water. You just feel that a lot went into designing this thing and its behaviour. And I think if one message is gotten over with this video is that that's worth the ticket of entry alone. You don't see that sort of detail put into having a companion that large and with that many different behavioural options. I've been trying to think of like modern day equivalents, and Ark is one of the only decent ones I can come up with, and again that isn't the most detailed command system. The pots and pans falling down there, the great tumble mechanics, the game still sometimes looks 10th gen, but that goddamn UI coming up to telling me equip and unequip stuff, that gets me seething. I'll also be trying to show my viewer some excellent piece of lighting, and it will just rip the camera away from me and say, no, you're not doing that today, you've got to look at Trico. What on earth has become of Team Ico now, and do they make any noise? You know what, I dare not look. I don't want to read something that says they've gone and they're not coming back, and we're not going to get another Shadow of the Colossus 2. That remaster of Shadow of the Colossus on the PlayStation 4, which is excellent and is featured on loads of videos, was handled by Bluepoint, and it was kind of an outsourced upscale. An outsourced upscale, I'm being really harsh. It's billed as a full-blown remake. That's interesting, that line from remaster to remake. Someone in the comments pulled me up on saying remaster instead of remake, and it actually boils down to what the developers want to call it. It's their business, and how deeply they took that. Rebuild is something they don't even have to reveal, so the end user will have to accept what they call it. I've not explained that very well. It's a bit like a chef who says, here you go, I've made you a pizza. It's not, it's cheese on toast, but you just have to say, yeah, cheers mate, and eat it anyway. We made it outside, 16 hours, room to room, darkened, key searching, throwing barrels around and fitting this damn great thing through small doors. We get outside, we get to look at the game in that full, beautiful sunlight, and that's where it really excels. What's my final verdict? With The Last Guardian on the PlayStation 5, we could have done with a hell of a lot more boost and an SSD version, but I still love the game. It's so important to me with its backstory and all the dramas and all of the systems that spanned between its inception and its finished product. If you'd like to hear more Cheese on Toast pizza analogies, I will link my best remake and remaster PlayStation 5 games video in the description. I have been CouchCoo. I will see you down there.
Who's that wonderful girl? Could she be any cuter? Who's that wonderful girl? Oh look, here comes the